for joining us on this informational webinar on the request for proposals for SGC's Federal Environmental Justice Funding Technical Assistance Program. My name is Rebecca Aviles. I am a program analyst with the California Strategic Growth Council. Joining me today on the webinar is Sophie Young, Program Manager of the Transformative Climate Communities Program at SGC, as well as Amy Tadeo from the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, who is our main point of admin contact for this solicitation. We invite you as well to introduce yourselves in the chat, letting us know your name, your organization, where you're joining from today, how many cups of coffee you've had today so far. And prior to getting started and diving in, I would like to cover some housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and notes are being taken. That will be posted to the public California eProcure site as an addendum to this RFP following today's webinar. And for today's session, we ask you keep your line muted until a designated question and answer portion. You're also welcome to add questions to the chat in Zoom, and Sophie and Amy will work to respond to you in the chat window directly. Please also let us know in the chat if you have any tech issues, and we'll work to resolve those with you. Lastly, if questions arise after today's webinar, there are still 2 additional Q&A opportunities this month, this April, to submit written questions to SGC, and we will go over those timelines a little bit later in the presentation today. Here is our agenda for today. We'll go over the background and goals for this RFP, details in the scope of work, and then briefly cover the bidder response instructions, and then end up with some good time for question and answer from attendees, from you all who've joined us today. So this is a very, very simplified timeline and snapshot of this RFP. The solicitation became publicly available on Friday, March 24th, just last month. Today, Wednesday, April 5th, SGC is hosting this informational webinar, and the deadline for proposals is Monday, May 8th. SGC intends to begin work under the contract this summer, at the end of June, we hope, and this RFP is for up to $2 million in technical assistance activities and budgeted for a 3-year contract term to serve approximately 20 communities. So in short, this RFP emerged due to the historic levels of federal investment in clean energy and climate action from the Inflation Reduction Act, and paired with the federal government's commitment to advance racial equity and support underserved communities through policies like the Justice 40 initiative. This technical assistance program is also a response to the needs of the communities the Strategic Growth Council works with, and that is a need for capacity building and really investment in community developed multi-benefit climate projects. The California Strategic Growth Council, or SGC, we are within the Office of Planning and Research and the host department for this solicitation. And the mission of SGC is to coordinate and work collaboratively with public agencies, communities, and stakeholders to achieve sustainability, equity, economic prosperity, and quality of life for all Californians. And SGC does this in part by or through a multitude of public investment programs and initiatives that support community-led design. And this includes programs such as the Transformative Climate Communities Program, or TCC. I'll use the acronym TCC quite a bit today. TCC was established in 2016 by Assembly Bill 2722. And it funds the development and planning of neighborhood level community plans that reduce greenhouse gas emissions while providing local economic, environmental, and health benefits to underserved communities and communities disproportionately impacted by pollution and climate change. SGC has funded more than 30 community plans through the TCC program, And then most recently in 2022, the TCC program became a national model and a model for the US Environmental Protection Agency's Environmental and Climate Justice Program, and the $3 billion committed nationally for grants and technical assistance to community-based organizations to address and reduce indoor and outdoor air pollution. So there are TCC current grantees, former applicants, and prospective TCC applicants, which will kind of collectively define as SGC partners that have projects developed through really deep community partnership that could all benefit from US EPA funding or other federal agency dollars. And so through this solicitation and emerging technical assistance program, the California Strategic Growth Council, SGC, aims to provide SGC partners with capacity building and federal application assistance support to enable them to realize project plans and positively impact their communities. The overall purpose of this technical assistance program is to provide tailored assistance to SGC partners which are under-resourced community-based organizations and local governments in applying for and successfully accessing federal funding. And quickly, again, I just want to touch on the term SGC partner, since you'll see it throughout the RFP proposal and throughout the webinar today, and want to explain once more that the recipient of this technical assistance and this program will primarily be communities and partners from the TCC program, Transformative Climate Communities, but is open to prospective TCC applicants from other SGC programs, such as the Regional Climate Collaboratives or RCC grant program, which is a capacity building program for developing community-rooted plans and projects. So SGC partners is just the term we're kind of using to incorporate those different audience and recipients. Other goals of this technical assistance program, I have them here up on the screen, but increased capacity of SGC partners to utilize their existing TCC or other program project plans for federal funding, increased capacity to then implement federal funding if awarded, advancing a community-led climate planning process, expanded partnerships between SGC partners and those communities and federal agencies, secured federal investment, so that could be in a range of types and forms, but secured planning grants, secured project development grants, or implementation grants. And then lastly, the development with a TA provider and SGC partners of an effective and equitable process for grant application development. The scope of work that we have for this solicitation is split into 5 main categories. Task 1 involves a landscape analysis to inform future activities within the technical assistance program. And Task 2 focuses on dedicated coordination and tracking of federal opportunities. Task 3 is planning with communities around technical assistance and application development. And then in Task 4, the plans developed in Task 3 are actually implemented. Lastly, Task 5 is the broad admin coordination and reporting needed for the contract itself. So the coordination with SGC. Attachment 1, titled Scope of Work in the bid package online on Cal eProcure, contains complete details for each of these 5 tasks. And we will provide a summary in today's informational webinar. Okay, so Task 1, landscape analysis and initial partner discussion. Task 1 will begin at the beginning of the contract term with a goal to conduct work in the first 2 months or first quarter. Under Task 1, the technical assistance contractor team will coordinate with SGC to design and conduct a landscape analysis to help inform and shape the activities to be completed in subsequent tasks 2, 3, and 4. And as was mentioned, for this RFP, the audience served will be SGC partners who may and who are in all different stages of project development and have unique community interests and needs. So the goal of this tasks through an actual survey and then discussions with SGC partners is to better understand the funding needs and gaps that exist, the project plans that exist, levels of readiness, and possible current funding plans from SGC partners. Here under task 1, the technical assistance contractor and their team will provide analysis and expertise in a deliverable, what we're calling SGC partner roadmaps that will outline the types of further technical assistance recommended through the 3-year technical assistance program. Moving on to task 2. So task 2, this is an ongoing activity throughout the duration of the contract and will begin at the start of the contract term. It is essentially gleaning and sharing federal funding information, including program guidelines and grant program application details. Here, the objective is to gather, track, and then organize and distribute to SGC partners federal funding information, plus facilitating really meaningful engagement and relationship building with SGC partners and federal agencies to ensure that SGC partners can become well connected with these agencies. Because the US EPA Environmental Justice Block Grants through the Inflation Reduction Act are modeled after SGC's Transformative Climate Communities program, the priority and focus under task 2 is to track the emergence of a NOFA, or Notice of Funding Availability, from the US EPA and their Environmental and Climate Justice program, which at the moment is expected late summer 2023. But in addition to this priority with US EPA, the technical assistance contractor would track program funding availability from other identified agencies of interest. And outside of this SGC technical assistance program, we are aware that federal agencies, states, non-governmental organizations are developing and offering their own technical assistance programs. Part of the work under task 2 is to connect SGC partners to these resources where eligible. All right. Task 3 is where the planning for grant application development will take place. The technical assistance contractor team will utilize the SGC partner roadmaps developed in task 1 to assist SGC partners develop a detailed grant application plan or plans, it could be multiple, tailored to the requirements of their matching federal grant program or programs of interest. The technical assistance contractor team will provide strategic guidance as well as resources, templates, and tools to facilitate and complete this planning. Okay, task 4. Task 4 is really where the bulk of the work for this contract and technical assistance program will come in. This is direct application assistance for SGC partners as they implement plans developed in task 3 and develop and submit competitive applications to various federal agencies. As the RFP lays out, this will involve guidance to applicants on project development support. So things such as work planning, budgeting, preparation of readiness requirements and documents, meeting the kind of long list of requirements for federal applications. Could also include environmental and climate risk and response assessments, partnership development with applicants, and community and workforce co-benefit project development, all under this task 4 implementation stage. Like with task 3, the technical assistance contractor team will provide training, resources, and assistance to complete and actually submit these applications. All right, final task here, task 5. Task 5, like I mentioned at the beginning, covers the administration, coordination, and reporting needed for the contract. This includes meeting with SGC for regular updates, quarterly and final report preparation and submission, and through coordination with SGC throughout the contract term. Task 5 also involves the continuous identification of opportunities for alignment with other technical assistance resources and offerings. So really that close collaboration with SGC to improve this technical assistance program as it's new, and we want to, increase our impact. For the solicitation, we are asking that bidders assemble teams that can demonstrate a minimum of 3 years of experience with first providing technical assistance and grant writing support, 3 years of experience in urban planning or community development, and then experience working directly with disadvantaged, low-income, unincorporated, and tribal communities in California. Experience with federal and state grant writing and award success. And then finally, experience actual implementation of federal and state grant awards. And the experience here in the RFP and on these slides, it directly reflects the scope of work and skills needed to perform the activities. So we also ask that bidder teams demonstrate technical knowledge of the TCC program and framework, which is a community process model. And I think we can add a link to the TCC program page into the chat for those of you who aren't familiar, but being knowledgeable of the TCC program and the partners is a strength and something we're asking bidders to demonstrate. We also ask that bidder teams demonstrate technical knowledge around a myriad of focus areas. I'll not read through all of these here in orange, but they mirror key aspects of the TCC program, as well as funding areas from the US EPA. Okay, evaluation criteria. So the evaluation criteria, this is again in attachment 1, the scope of work document on Cal eProcure. But the evaluation criteria will look at A, here on the screen, clarity and organization of the proposal. B, the approach to the scope of work, including a detailed project management plan with a qualified program and project manager and methodology and approach for each task. And then C, the work plan, schedule, and budget justification. Here's the second evaluation criteria slide. We also, under D, evaluate the proposer and team experience. So this is directly scoring from the qualifications and desired experience and knowledge I detailed just a slide or so back. The evaluation criteria provided on these slides that you see here is listed started on page 15 of the attachment 1 in the RFP. And this solicitation, it is a secondary method RFP, which simply means that the bids are scored based on a qualitative basis. So we're looking at beyond simply cost effectiveness of proposals, but really at the proposer and team experiences and approach. So the table that I've just showed you on these last 2 slides, this is the technical evaluation criteria. It makes up 100 of the total 150 points. So you'll see we've placed a lot of emphasis on the approach to the scope of work and the team's experience. And the scoring for teams expands upon the minimum criteria we presented. Great. We're going to transition a bit now and talk about what you need to include in your proposal. So what does a bidder's response package actually look like? For those of you who are less familiar with Cal eProcure, or maybe you haven't visited in some time, this is a view of the page for this specific solicitation. We will drop a link in the chat to the bid itself, to the homepage. But if you navigate to this request for proposal page, you can access all of the proposal attachments by clicking on the view event package. Here it's circled in red button, which includes an instructions document. That's really helpful. So a proposal and bid package itself has multiple components that are listed here on this page. These are the components you must include in your proposal. More information, more detailed information is in the RFP as well, especially around formatting requirements that we request. And I do want to note that forgetting to include some of these components could result in disqualification or points loss, which we'll talk about a couple of slides later. So we want to bring those to your attention so that we can consider all responses submitted. Here, the title page, letter of commitment, table of contents, and proposal checklist. These are all pretty straightforward and simple. This helps us and you ensure there's nothing missing before you submit, and helps us as we begin to review the different proposals. The response to work. This is really where a large portion of the overall submission should be. This should detail your methodology and approach to the work. In response to the high-level scope, we just went through those tasks 1 through 5, and which are laid out in detail in the RFP. This should also reflect and consider the scoring criteria that we went over just a moment ago. And we have a following slide to talk about the response to scope of work in a bit more detail. Your proposal will also need to include qualifications, including proof of minimum qualifications. Those minimum qualifications we had up on the screen. Also include personnel and team resumes and reference forms. In your proposal, we also want to see your work plan, your work schedule, and budget justification. As mentioned earlier, we will be evaluating these materials to evaluate effectiveness and feasibility of your approach. So you must include budget and cost detail as part of this proposal with enough detail for us to evaluate it. The last aspect of your proposal is ensuring that you include all of the required attachments in the instructions document in the bid package. There's a list of these attachments. We'll also go through them briefly today, but that's an important part of your proposal. To get a little bit more into the requirements for the response to the scope of work, this slide gives a summary. I won't go into too much detail here. Something important to note is that the project management plan should include subcontractors or any subcontractors that you're planning on using and names of project managers. Additionally, under methodology and approach, SGC is interested in your unique approach to each scope of work, task, and deliverable, including any suggested modifications to the scope you may have, modifications that could more effectively or equitably meet the goals and objectives of this RFP. So that can all be included in your response to the scope of work under this methodology and approach section. Qualifications. In terms of qualifications, SGC at a minimum needs to see proof of meeting the minimum qualifications. So please describe the relevant work of the proposed team members. We also want to see personnel or team resumes. And the proposer references form that's a part of the bid package online requires at least 3 references to be included. And this is required for both the main proposer and each subcontractor on the proposal. For the budget, please use the budget template. Again, we have a lot of the templates, but this is provided in the event package for the RFP provided on the Cal eProcure site. This slide includes some information on costs we typically see in proposals that help us to evaluate it. As a reminder, the maximum amount available for this contract is $2 million for a 3-year contract term. So please plan your budget accordingly. You do also need to use Cal HR travel and per diem expenses. Let me see if I can drop this link in the chat. One moment here. All right, I dropped in the link for Cal HR travel and per diem expenses. All can be found at that site. Travel rates, those do vary and depend on location. You can find more information at that link when developing your budget. And last, these attachments. So this slide lists all of the 22 attachments in the bid package. Please make sure to look at all of these and ensure you've uploaded the required ones for your proposal. On this slide, it's anything with an asterisk is a required attachment. And please note, this is important. Attachment 6, the bidder declaration, is critical. Without this included in your proposal, you will be disqualified. So the RFP, it is out and available. It is live. The most important date to remember is Monday, May 8th, 2023. This is the deadline for proposal submission. Please note that 5 p.m. exactly on the dot is the deadline for receipt by SGC. So we encourage you to try and get in your proposals in early, a minute early. Sometimes it does take time for the system to process your application. And based on our state contracting policies, we cannot accept or score any bids that come in after this deadline, even if just by a second. So we anticipate that we will post our notice of intent to award on May 24th, following that May 8th proposal deadline. And we hope that we can begin the contract by end of June, which is when we anticipate knowing more also about the emerging US EPA environmental justice block grants. I also would like to highlight the 2 deadlines, upcoming deadlines to submit written questions here on the screen. It's this Friday, April 7th, and then Friday, April 21st. If you have questions for SGC or for contracts about the solicitation, please submit written questions to our inbox, which I will put the email on the screen just here in a minute. We will post responses to your questions on Cal eProcure the following Friday after that deadline. So that's April 14th and April 28th. Okay, now we would love to turn it over, to you all for some questions. There were no pre-submitted webinar questions, but we welcome your questions or comments now. We would like for you to use the raise hand feature in Zoom to let us know that you have a question. And so we'll call on you just in the order received, and you can unmute yourself. Please also feel welcome to add questions to the chat if you would like, that way, and we can respond to you. But we have time for questions. And let me pull up let me get the actual email up for you, contracts@opr.ca.gov, and pull up the view so I can see whose hands are raised. And again, if you don't have questions today, we have 2 more deadlines this month. Okay, I see Michael. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for taking my question. Michael Verdi with Accenture. A question about subcontractors. Are subcontractors allowed to appear on multiple proposals? I saw in this W and RFP that there's a limit on, I guess, prime applicants in terms of a single proposal, but is there a restriction on subs appearing in more than one proposal?
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us today and for your question. So the question I'm hearing, is there a limit or a rule against subcontractors being a part of multiple bids? And I will ask Amy, who is our contracts lead, for a response to that question. Amy, are you there?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. This is Amy from our contracts unit. Michael, yes, they're able to be on multiple main contractors' proposal. We do ask that you submit the subcontractors, of course, the required form on the attachment 6 bidder declaration, and also identify them on the attachment 7, the commercially useful function. If they are small business or disabled veterans business enterprise owned, the subcontractors should be identified there as well. So the answer, yes.
Great, thank you, Amy.
Oh, I just minimized my screen and I'm trying to see if we have any other hands raised. Rawa, please. Hi. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Rawa Milner, Accenture. My question today is, I haven't come across it in the RFP, but I was wondering if there is at least an estimate on what is the size of the grants. So are we talking minimum, maximum, or what do you guys have an ideation around the size of the grants that we will be supporting your partners to submit applications for?
Hi, Roa. So good to meet you. Thank you for that terrific question. You're right. It's not, we don't have amounts specified in our RFP around amounts, grant amounts. I will say that we are open to a range. TCC or SGC partners could be applying for planning grants at the federal level, project development grants, implementation grants. For those of you that are familiar with the TCC program, our implementation grants are in the scale of $20 to $35 million. So I think the community project plans that are developed through TCC and that we've seen from project partners are within that range, and it would be great to pursue single large grant projects that could cover and implement some of those project plans, but it could also be like a patchwork of smaller grants from different agencies. So it could be a range. And Sophie, I don't know if you would have other thoughts to add to that. Great question.
I think also a lot of the details will be clear once the technical assistance providers determine the needs of the TCC pipeline and the SGC partners. And then also once the details on the federal environmental justice grants come out. So I think that that will, determine sort of the range of grants that the communities will be, we're hoping that they'll be prepared to apply for. Does that help, Roa?
I believe so, yes. Thank you.
Next, I see Julia.
Hello, hi. So thanks so much for having this webinar today. I am a former TCC program member, part of the original staff team there in Sacramento, and now am based in New York City as an independent consultant, policy consultant. I just wanted to put it out there to any of the organizations on this call that I would be very interested in being a subcontractor on your proposal. I could offer a lot related to the TCC program and knowledge of the program, knowledge of disadvantaged communities and planning in California, and then also, of course, the displacement avoidance and community engagement pieces. So I could really bring a lot of knowledge and expertise to any proposal. I think my question here, and I will put my email in the chat in case anyone is interested in contacting me. My question here is, I did see on the portal that you have a link where you kind of say, it almost looks like there's a option to say, you know, here are subcontractors who are looking for teams, and then vice versa, here are teams that are looking for subcontractors. And so I'm wondering if that's something that you recommend that we should all engage with, or and if I'm understanding that correctly in your online materials and presentation. Thank you.
Hi, Julia. So good to have you on the call and to have TCC expertise here within our virtual room. I am hearing your question about the Cal eProcure site and that platform. And I will have to lean on expertise from either Amy or Sophie and their knowledge of Cal eProcure. Amy or Sophie, are you familiar with that function on Cal eProcure for subcontractors?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take the lead on that question. There is a way where we can have subcontractors on a list. I'll provide that on an addendum and just look out for that update as far as adding you on the list as eligible subcontractors for this project.
Thank you, Amy. So subcontractors can request or apply to be on that list, which is then visible on the posting. Is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. Next hand raised I saw is Doris.
Hi there, I'm Doris. My question is, are bidders that are applying to the TCC planning or implementation grants ineligible for applying as a bidder or on a bidder team to this federal environmental justice funding TA program?
That is a terrific question, Doris. And again, Amy or Sophie, I believe we do have conflict of interest, some policies around this, if you're able to share.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Are bidders that are also applying to the TCC planning or implementation grants ineligible for applying as a bidder or on a bidder team to this TA program?
Are you saying that you're currently on an existing contract with OPR?
Not a current one, but there's the round 5 applications that are, we're possibly being included on a team there. And I just wanted to know that if that moved forward, would we be ineligible for applying to be on a team as under the TA program?
No, the evaluation will be based strictly on the technical piece that you provide. We don't take any past work into consideration. It'll be strictly technical on the proposal that's submitted. So there's no conflict there.
Okay, and just to clarify further, when you say past work, if it becomes, current work, does that change anything?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Doris. That's a great question. And as we are in the midst of round 5 applications, a very timely question. Next here, I see a question or hand raised from Chul.
Hi, good morning. This is Chul Gugic from LaSar Development Consultants. Thanks for having this webinar. Really appreciate it. I had a question. I think earlier you mentioned that the selected technical assistant team would be serving approximately 20 communities. I'm not sure if I heard that correctly. Does that number 20 communities roughly correspond to the number of SGC partners that we're anticipating to be served here? And then if so, where are these partners located geographically? Are they concentrated in any specific areas, or are they kind of across the state? Thanks.
Hi, Chul. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your question. I did say that the goal through the technical assistance program is to serve around 20 communities or 20 kind of distinct SGC partners. That's our goal. And I think the final number is also part of that task 1, that landscape analysis and determining partners to really participate in the technical assistance program. So it could be fewer, but the partners, the SGC partners that are the recipient for this technical assistance, they are distributed regionally throughout California. They're not focused in one region or territory. And let me see, I might be able to direct you to, we have a couple of good maps of where TCC recipients are located from past rounds. And I'll also open it up to Sophie. Sophie, if you have additional thoughts on partners and communities served under this program.
Sure, I think the good place to start would be looking at the previously awarded TCC grantees, planning grantees who haven't received implementation, or potential implementation grantees who are looking to build on their work. There's also kind of an unknown, or it's not public currently, but a list of applicants to TCC who maybe haven't been awarded yet that might be interested in this opportunity as well. And then also the regional climate collaboratives, previous applicants and awardees who may also be interested in this opportunity. So it is definitely across the whole entire state. And then those lists will be helpful for you. And actually, I misspoke. Previous TCC applicants are also listed in past staff reports. So that information is available.
Any other questions? Again, feel free to also put questions in the chat. And a reminder that, oh, Michael, hi, yes.
Hi, Rebecca. Sorry, just to follow up on the question from Chul in terms of potential scale of the support. The RFP says 10 to 20 communities, but it sounded like clarified to expect up to 20. Just in terms of thinking through planning for the budget, do you have guidance for applicants to plan the level of effort around supporting 20 communities? Is it okay to provide a range in our submission for our budget, depending on the size of the number of communities that we're working with?
Hi, Michael. That's a great question. Yes, that's perfectly fine to include a range in your submitted budget. And I think that's also what we're anticipating through the program, that level of technical assistance could look different with each SGC partner. So we welcome that when you submit your budget proposal.
Thank you.
Hi, Michael.
Hi there. Following up on Michael's question.
Yeah.
Could you provide guidance to the vendor partner community on how many, what kind of support levels might be needed? Because if we assume X and our pricing is built on X, somebody else assumes Y, there won't be an even evaluation. It skews things. Could you provide more guidance for that pricing?
I can try to respond. Thank you, Michael, for that question. I think I'm in terms of the level of support, I think it will take understanding what some of the communities are that are potentially in this pipeline. And part of that first task will be doing a bit of a landscape analysis. So, you know, we have some understanding there of the different communities and some being, you know, more ready or having more capacity, but I think it will be helpful to, I think, build in the ability to do that analysis and to provide the level of support that's needed, if that makes sense. I think because, you know, all the communities are kind of at a different stage.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I hope that's helpful. You know, I think it's hard. We can't really provide like, you know, one baseline across the board because all the communities are in a different place.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Sophie. Thank you for sharing that. Where I don't know that I was very clear. Maybe what I could do is submit a written question on this topic as a follow-up. But
Sure,
thank you.
yeah. Something else occurred to me, which is that you know, some of the communities have completed community planning. Maybe they need some project development support, or maybe they have done some project development and they are ready for implementation dollars. And then, you know, there are some that have not done any of the community planning. So just to give a sense for the different types of levels that some of the partners are at. But one thing that, as mentioned, is that we are looking to, you know, in particular, support those who have done some planning, level of planning, and that just might need a little bit of extra support to get to do the project development, to access those implementation dollars in the that are described in the RFP, excuse me. But yeah, we'll look for your question, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Michael, for your questions, for all the questions. Again, we have taken notes today, so the questions that were answered on today's informational webinar will be posted. But want to give a few more minutes if there are any additional questions we can answer while we're here. Okay. I don't see any other chat questions. Oh, another raised hand. Hi, Levin.
Hi, thanks for holding the session. It's so useful. We've been just starting to work through the Greenlining Institute with some TCC awardees, and you know, they are applying for implementation grants. And it seems like there is a diversity of TA really needed, even within a single TCC applicant, because they have so many different collaborators or partners. So in the one that we are doing the most on, they have 12 partners. And so in identifying what's needed, one of the challenges has been that as it proceeds, more needs kind of emerge. And so it's kind of hard to budget. What would you suggest, or what have you seen in terms of approach to our budgeting form here? I mean, should we kind of assume some percentage are on that higher need basis and some are at the lower need? I'm just wondering if you have some guidance on, because we're at the beginning of this, like what that range is in terms of the level of need between different applicants.
Thank you for your question. So glad to have you here. I'm glad you're connected with the Greenlining Institute as well. And there definitely is an ecosystem of technical assistance emerging. And similarly, when we are developing this RFP, we imagined that, you know, through the landscape analysis, kind of needs assessment and task one, that we may uncover some like kind of larger technical assistance or support needs from communities. But in terms of your specific question around just budgeting and the challenge of budgeting, I would say, yes, I would or recommend when you budget, you know, of the potential 20 communities, that a quarter are like really kind of like deep technical assistance, and then maybe another quarter is a little bit more light touch, but to budget for kind of levels, all levels and stages within that 20 or so, up to 20 communities. And it is, I forget now which task, but we would also encourage the future, you know, contractor team to notify SGC of, you know, if there are needs that emerge, you know, halfway through the technical assistance program, that SGC is aware of those. We often look for, you know, other funding resources, try and pull from other funds to support some of that work if it couldn't be completed under this specific scope. Sophie, I'll also open the floor to you if you have other thoughts.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with that feedback. And I think also we will look to the respondents to see what your methodology is for understanding what the community needs are, and also proposing, you know, that range of the budget. So I think, you know, it is a bit of, you know, we do want to see kind of what your all experience and knowledge is in this area, and ability to determine what appropriate level of technical assistance you can provide is. So that will be, I guess, yeah, we'll just say that that's also part of the process.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick follow-up question. So when you develop the work plan, it sounds like that's the amount that's budgeted for. And then if additional needs arise, you would have to find potentially other sources. There's not the ability to increase a particular budget because that TCC applicant team among the partners finds out that they need more, or they didn't anticipate what was really needed. Because part of the challenge, of course, is they're getting to know each other in the process at the same time, but there's not like the ability to increase within this framework or this source.
Right, that's right. I think we went through this recently with another technical assistance contract, and we aren't able to increase or change the scope, I believe. And Amy, please correct me if that's wrong. And so this is the amount of funding that we currently have for this purpose. So I think part of the task and the challenge will be to scope out, you know, what technical assistance you are able to provide with the resources. And then if there are other needs with communities, I think, yeah, just determining how to pivot or find other resources, because I think, unfortunately, this is all the funding that we have at this time.
All right, we are approaching the hour mark. And Noemi, we will send, we can provide the slide deck, yes. And the recording will eventually be posted and we can share that as well. It may take a few days on our end. All right. Well, thank you. Aura, I don't believe we share participant information. So if you are hoping to connect with someone who's shared their email in this chat, I just encourage you to jot down that information. And as Amy did remind us, eProcure can also be a platform for subcontractors and sharing contact information. But yes, we won't end the webinar quite yet. If you want to go back to the chat and note down some emails and contact information. But I want to say thank you all for joining us today. Again, if you have questions related to the contracting and bidding process or the RFP, please feel free to reach out to us at contracts@opr.ca.gov. And we wish you the best rest of your day. We'll leave the chat open, I guess, here so folks can take note. But thank you for joining us. I'll stop sharing my screen. Thanks all. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Take care.